understand that you speak English.
Yes, I speak English.
Would you take the oath in English form?
Yes, I prefer to say the oath in English.
What is your name?
My name is Hans Cappeln.
Will you repeat the oath after me? I
swear
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I should give
shall be the truth,
shall be true,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
So help me God.
You may sit down.
Yes.
Monsieur Dubost, can you spell the name?
C A 2 P E L E N.
It would help the tribunal if the names of these witnesses could be handed up. It's extremely difficult to get these names, foreign names.
Ils ont été donnés, Monsieur le Président, hier soir. Hier soir, j'ai fait porter au tribunal une lettre qui était destinée à Monsieur le Président et au tribunal.
I see. I haven't received it.
Monsieur Cappelin, vous êtes né le 18 décembre 1903.
Yes,
Dans quelle ville?
I am born in Kviteseid in Telemark, Norway.
Quelle est votre profession?
I was a lawyer, but now I am a businessman.
Voulez-vous dire ce que vous savez des brutalités de la Gestapo en Norvège?
Yes. My lord, I was arrested 29th of November 1941 and brought to the Gestapo prison in Oslo, Møllergata 19. After 10 days, I was interrogated by two Norwegian NS or Nazi police agents. They started nearly at once to beat me with bludgeons. How long this interrogation lasted, I can't exactly remember. But it did lead to nothing. So, after some days, I was brought to the Victoria Terrace, that was the headquarters of the Gestapo in Norway. It was about 8 o'clock in the night. I was brought into a seemingly big room, and they asked me to undress. I had to undress till I was absolutely naked. I was a little bit swollen after first treatment I had by the Norwegian police agents, but it wasn't so bad. There was then present about 6 or 8 Gestapo agents, and their leader was Criminal Rat, was his title, Femer. He was very angry, and they started to bombard me with questions which I couldn't answer. So Mr. Femer ran upon me and tore all the hair of my head. So hair and blood was laying on the floor around. And so all of a sudden, they all started to run upon me and beat me with rubber bludgeons and iron wire. That hurt me very bad, and I fainted. But I was brought back to life again in the way that they poured ice-cold water over me. I vomited, naturally, because I was feeling very sick. But that only made them angry, and they said, "Clean up, you dirty dog." And I had to make an attempt to clean up with my bare hands. In this way, they carried on for a long, long time. But the interrogation led to nothing, because they bombarded me and asked me of persons who I didn't knew. I suppose it must have been in the morning I was brought back again to the prison. I was placed in my cell and felt very sick and ill. Also in the day, I asked the guard if I couldn't have a doctor. That was denied me. After some days, I suppose it must have been the day before Christmas Eve, 1941, I was again in the night brought to Victoria Terrace. The same happened as last time, only that this time it was very easy for me to undress because I had only a coat over me. I was very swollen up from the beating last time. As last time, 6, 7, or 8 Gestapo agents were present.
German Gestapo, do you mean?
Yes, German Gestapo, all of them.
Yes.
And Femer was present that time too, and he had a rank in SS and was also criminal commissar. They now started to beat me again, but it was useless to beat a man like me who was so swollen up and so bad-looking. Then they started in another way. They started to screw and break my arms and legs. And my right arm dislocated. I felt an awful pain and fainted again. Then the same happened as last time. They poured water over me and I came back again. No, all the Germans there were absolutely mad. They roared like animals and bombarded me with questions again. But I was so tired I couldn't answer. Then they placed a sort of home, it looked to me as a sort of homemade wood thing with a screw arrangement on my left leg. And they started to screw so that all the meat loosened from the bone. I felt an awful pain and fainted away again. But I came back again, and I have still big marks here on my legs after screw arrangement. So that led to nothing, and then they placed something on my neck. I still marked and loosened the meat here. But then I had a collapse. And all of a sudden I felt that I was sort of paralyzed in the right side. It has afterwards been proved that I have had a cerebellate hemorrhage. And I got that double vision. I saw two of each Gestapo agents, and all was going round and around for me. That double vision I have had for years, and when I'm tired, it's coming back again. But I'm better now, so I can move again in the right side, but I'm the right side is a little bit affected from that. Well, I can't remember much more from that night, but the other prisoners who had to clean up the corridors in the prison, I had seen them bringing me back again in the morning. That must have been about 6 o'clock in the morning. They thought I was dead because I have no iron on my hands. If it had been for 1 day or 2 days, I can't tell, but one day I moved again and was a little bit clear. And then the guard at once was in my cell, where I was laying on a brisk amongst my own vomiting and blood. And afterwards there came a doctor. He had, I suppose, quite a high rank. Which rank, I can't exactly say. He told me that I most probably would die. Especially if I wasn't. I asked him, couldn't you bring me to a hospital? Because he said no. Who are not to be brought to any hospital. Before you do just as we say you shall do. And as all Norwegians, you are a fool. Well, they put my arm into joint again. That was very bad, but 2 soldiers held me and they threw me. And I fainted away again. So the time passed, and I rescued a bit. I couldn't walk because all things were going around for me. So I was laying on the brisk all the time. And but so one day, it must have been in the end of February, or in the middle of February, 1942, one night they came again. It must have been about 10 o'clock in the night, because the light in my cell had been out for quite a long time. They asked me to stand up, and I made an attempt and fell down again because then they kicked me, but I said, it's better to kick me to death because I can't move. Well, they dragged me out of the cell, and I was again brought up to Victoria Terrace. That's the headquarters where they made their interrogations. This time, the interrogation was led by one SS man called Steer. I couldn't stand, so naked as I was laying on the floor. Steer had some assistants, 4 or 5 Gestapo agents, and they started to tramp on me, kick me. So all of a sudden, they brought me to my feet again and brought me to a table where Steer was sitting. He took my left hand like this and put some pins under my nails and started to break them up. Well, it hurted me badly, and all things going around and around for me, double vision. But the pain was so intensive that I threw my hand back. I shouldn't have done that, because that made them absolutely furious. I fainted away and collapsed nearly, and I don't know for how long a time, but I came back to life again by the smelling of burnt flesh, or burnt meat. And then one of the Gestapo agents was standing with a little sort of a lamp burning me under my feet. It didn't hurt me so much because I was so feeble that I didn't care only. And I was so paralyzed, my tongue couldn't work, so I couldn't speak. I could only groan a bit. Crying naturally I was. Well, I don't remember so much more of that time, but this was to me one of the worst things was true with respect to interrogations. I was brought back again to the prison, and time passed, and I attempted to eat a little bit. I spewed most of it up again, but I threw it up again, most of it, but little by little. I recovered. I was still paralyzed in the side, so I couldn't stand up. But I was often taken into interrogations again, and then I was confronted with other Norwegians, people I knew and people I didn't knew, and most of them were bad treated. They were swollen up, and I remember especially 2 of my friends, 2 very good persons. I had been confronted with them, and they were very bad looking from torture, and when I came back again after my prisonship, I learned that they both were dead. They died from it. Another instance which I am to tell, I hope my Lord will permit me to do it, was a person called Sverre Emil Halvorsen. He was one day, that must have been the autumn, or in August or October 1943. He was a little bit swollen up and very unhappy. And he said they had treated him so bad but he and some of his friends had been in some sort of a court where they had told them that they were to be shot next day. They placed a sort of sentence upon them just to statue an example. Well, Halvorsen had naturally a headache and felt very ill. And I asked the guard to bring the head guard. That was one person, Mr. Götz. He came and asked what the devil I wanted. I said, my comrade is very ill. Couldn't he have some aspirins? Some aspirins. Some aspirins. Oh no, he said. It's wasted to give him aspirin because he has to be shot in the morning. Next morning he was brought out of the cell, and after the war they found him up at Trandum together with other Norwegians in a grave there. Other Norwegians in a grave there. Well, the Møllergata 19 in Oslo, the prison where I was for about 25 months, was a house of horror. I heard every night, nearly every night, people screaming and groaning. One day, it must have been in December 1943, about 8th of December it was. They came into my cell and told me to dress. It was in the night. I put on my ragged clothes, what I had. No, I had recovered pretty good. I was naturally lame in the one side. Couldn't walk so well, but I could walk. And I went down in the corridor, and there I placed me as usual against the wall, and I waited that they would bring me away and shoot me. But they didn't shoot me. They brought me to Germany together with heaps of other Norwegians. I learned afterwards that some few of my friends and I, with friends I mean Norwegians, not exactly friends, we were so-called Nacht- und Nebel prisoners, night and mist prisoners. We were brought to a camp called Natzweiler in Alsace. It was a very bad camp, I dare say. I shall only, we had to work in a stone, to take out stone of the mountains. But I shall not bother by telling of details from Natzweiler.
My lord, I will only say that all other nations, French, Russians, Dutch, Belgians, were there, and we are about 500 Norwegians who have been there, and of those 500 Norwegians, between 60 and 70% dead, there or in other NN camps after evacuation. Also 2 Danes were there. Well, we saw many cruel things there, so cruel that, but it is naturally well known. The camp had to be evacuated in September 1944. We were then brought to Dachau by Munich. But we didn't stay long there, at least I didn't stay long there. I was sent to a command called Aurich in East Friesland, where we were about, that was under command of Neuengamme by Hamburg, I suppose. We were there about 1,500 prisoners. We had to dig panzer graves. Well, the prisoners had every day to walk about 3 or 4 hours, and by train 1 hour to the panzer graves where we were. The work was so strong, so hard, and the way they treated us in so bad that most of them died there. I suppose about half of the prisoners died by dysentery or by ill treatment in the 6 weeks we were there. It was too much even for the SS who had to take hand of the camp. So they gave it up, I suppose. And I was sent via Neuengamme by Hamburg to a camp called Gross Rosen in Silesia. It's in the neighborhood of Breslau. That was a very bad camp too. We were about 40 Norwegians there, and of those 40 Norwegians, we were about 10 left after 4 to 5 weeks. So it was sent.
You'll be some little time longer, so I think we'd better adjourn now for 10 minutes. continue?
Voulez-vous continuer
Well,
de nous parler de votre passage dans les camps et nous parler notamment de ce que vous savez du camp de Natzweiler et de l'activité au camp de Natzweiler du docteur Hirt de la faculté de médecine allemande de Strasbourg.
well, in Natzweiler, yes, there was also carried on experiments. Just beside the camp, there was a farm they called Struthof. That was practically a part of the camp, and some of the prisoners had to work there to clean up the rooms and well, not so often, but sometimes on the call, they were taken out. For instance, one day I remember, all the gypsies were taken out, and then they were brought down to Struthof. We were very afraid of being brought down there. Well, one friend of mine, a Norwegian called Widding, he had a job in the hospital, so-called hospital, in the camp. And he told me afterwards, the day after the gypsies were brought away down to Struthof, he said, I tell you something, he said. They have, so far I can understand, attempted some sort of gas upon them. How do you know that? I said. Well, come along with me. And then, through the window of the hospital, I could see 4 of the gypsies laying in beds. They didn't look well, and it was so easy to see through the glass, but they had some mucus, green mucus, I suppose, around their mouths. And he told me that they had, as Widding told me, that the gypsies couldn't tell much because they were so ill. But so far he understood, this gas which they had used upon them, it was 12 of them, and the 4 was living, the other 8, so far Widding had understood, died down there at Struthof. Well, and Widding told further on, you see that long man who sometimes walked through the camp, together with some others. Well, I've seen him, I said. That's Professor Hirt, or Hirtz, from the German university in Strasbourg. I'm quite sure, Widding said, that his name is Hirt or Hirtz. He is coming here now, nearly daily with a so-called commission to see those who are coming back again from Struthof, to see the result. That's all I know about that so far. I don't know.
Combien est-il mort de Norvégiens à Gross-Rosen?
In Gross-Rosen, it is not possible for me to say the exact cipher, but I know about 40 persons who have been there, and I also know about 10 who came back again. Well, Gross-Rosen was a bad camp, but nearly the worst of it all was the evacuation of Gross-Rosen. I suppose it must have been in the middle of February this year. The Russians came near and near to Breslau.
You mean 1945?
45, I mean, excuse me.
They, one day we were placed up for the so-called Appellplatz. We were very feeble, all of us. We have had hard work, little food, and all sorts of ill treatment. Well, we started to walk in parties, of about 8,000. In the party, we were about 2,500 to 2,800. We heard they said so many when they took up the numbers. Well, we started to walk, and we had SS guards on each side. They were very nervous and behaved nearly as mad persons. We thought some of them were drunk. Feeble as we were, we couldn't walk fast enough. And then they took their guns, the line of 5 and 5, the line just before us. They took their gun and smashed in the head of all 5 of them. And they said, so geht es, wenn man nicht vernünftig marschiert. So I say it in German because if you don't walk in an intelligent way, see what will happen to you. Well, we walked the best we could, but naturally we lost some. We attempted to help those who were worst off, but we were all of us so feeble it wasn't good to help them. But at last, after 6 to 8 hours, we came to a station, railway station. It was very cold, and we had only such striped prison clothes on, and bad boots, naturally. But we said, oh, we are glad that we now come to a railway station. It's better to stand in a cow truck than to walk in the rain now in the middle of the winter. It was very cold, 10 to 12 degrees, I suppose, very cold. But there was a long train with open tracks. In Norway we call them sand trucks. And we were kicked up on those trucks, about 80 on each trucks. We had to sit so together. And on this truck we sat for about 5 days without food, cold, without water. When it was snowing we made like this just to get some wet in the mouth. And naturally, after a long, seemed to me for years travel, we came to a place which I afterwards learned was Dora. That's in the neighborhood of Buchenwald. Well, when we came there, they kicked us down from the tracks, but many were dead. The man who sat by me, he was dead, but I hadn't the right to get my way. I had to sit with a dead man for the last day. And I didn't see it really. But about a third of us or half of us were dead, sitting still. And they told that I heard the cipher afterwards in Dora, that the cipher of dead on our train were 1,347. 1,447. Well, from Dora I don't remember so much because I was more or less ready. I've always been a man of good humor and high-spirited. Of course, to help myself first and my friends. But I had nearly given up. Don't remember so much before. So I had a good chance because Bernadotte's action came and we were rescued and brought to Neuengamme by Hamburg. And there I met some of my old friends, the students from Norway who had been deported to other prisoners who came from Sachsenhausen and other camps, and the comparatively few Norwegian NN prisoners who were living, all in a very bad condition. Many of my friends are still in hospital in Norway. Some died after coming home. That's what's happened to me and my comrades in the 3 3/4 of a year was in prison ship. I am fully aware that it's impossible for me to give details more than I have done, but I've taken, so to say, the parts of it which shows, I hope, how it was and how they behaved against the Norwegian and in Norway, the German SS.
Pour quelle raison aviez-vous été arrêté?
I was arrested 29th of November 1941 in a place called Høstbjørn. That's a sort of sanatorium where you go for skiing.
Qu'aviez-vous fait? Que vous reprochait-on?
Well, what I had done, as most of us Norwegian, we regarded ourselves to be in war with Germany in one way or other, and naturally most of us were against by feelings, and also if, as Gestapo asked me, I remember, what do you think of Mr. Quisling? I only answered, what would you have done if a German officer, even a major, when your country was in war and your government had given an order for mobilization, he came and said, back again with a mobilization order. A man like that you can't wait that I shall respect.
Dans son ensemble, la population allemande a-t-elle ignoré ou connu ce qui se passait dans les camps?
That's naturally very difficult to me to answer. But in Norway, even at that time when I was arrested, we knew quite a lot about how the Germans treated their prisoners, at least. And it's one thing I remember in Munich, where I was working in St. Dachau for a short time. I was once, together with some others, brought to the town, Munich, to go into the ruins to seek for persons, blind bones and things like that. I suppose that was the idea. They never told us anything, but we knew what was on. We were about 100 persons, prisoners. We were looking like dead persons, all of us, very bad looking. We went through the street and people could see us. And they also could see what we were going to do, a sort of work which one should think was very dangerous and which should in some way help them. But there was no sympathy to see by them. Some of them were roaring to us, idiots, it's your fault that you are bombed.
Y avait-il des aumôniers dans vos camps, à vos camps? Aviez-vous le droit de prier?
Well, we had between the NN prisoners in Natzweiler, we had an NN priest from Norway. He was, I suppose you call it in English, Dean. He was quite a high rank. In Norwegian we call it Prost in Norwegian. From the west coast of Norway. He was also brought to Natzweiler as a NN prisoner. And some of my comrades, they asked him they couldn't meet sometimes so he could preach to them. But he said, no, I don't dare to do it. I had a Bible. They've taken it from me and they've joked about it and said, you dirty clergyman, if you show the Bible and come and things like that, you know. therefore didn't do anything in that way. I must say. That's all I've seen of that.
Vos mourants, ceux d'entre vous qui mouraient, recevaient-ils les secours de leur religion?
No.
Les morts étaient-ils traités avec décence?
No.
Y avait-il un service
They
religieux?
were... No.
Je n'ai plus de questions.
Я не имею вопросов, господин председатель.
Has the United States, does any member of the Defendant's Council wish to ask the witness any questions?
Verteidiger Merkel für die Gestapo. Herr Zeuge, bei dem ersten Verhör, das etwa 10 Tage nach Ihrer Verhaftung in Norwegen stattfand, wurden Sie da von deutschen oder von norwegischen Gestapo-Leuten verhört?
I was examined by the 2 Norwegians which were belonging to, I learned afterwards, the so-called state police. That was the Nazi police in Norway. They were working together with the Gestapo. In fact, it was the same. By them I was interrogated after 10 days. But they, as I heard from my afterwards, they usually did it in that way because it was easy to do it in Norwegian. And some of the Germans couldn't speak Norwegian. Most of them couldn't. I think it was therefore that they put the Norwegian, can we call them Gestapo practically? They let them handle the persons first.
Als dann in den Victoria-Terrassen, ich glaube, ich habe Sie recht verstanden, dass Sie damit das Hauptquartier der Gestapo in Oslo bezeichnet haben, vernommen wurden, waren bei diesem Verhör norwegische oder deutsche Beamte zugegen?
That is for me, I dare say there may have been one Norwegian as a sort of interpreter, but as I spoke the German language, so I can't with 100% security say if there were 1 or 2 Norwegian Nazi policemen there. It's difficult, but Victoria Terrasse was the headquarters of the Gestapo. Naturally, they had some Norwegian Nazis to help them there, but most of them were German.
Waren die Beamten, die Sie verhört haben, in Uniform oder in Zivil?
I have, during my interrogations, sometimes seen them in uniform too, but when they tortured me, they were most civil. So far I remember, was only 1 person in uniform during one of the torture interrogations. 1 had.
Sie sagen, dass Sie dann von einem Arzt behandelt wurden. Ist dieser Arzt von sich aus freiwillig gekommen oder haben Sie den Arzt gebeten zu kommen?
First time I asked for a doctor, but then I didn't get any. But that time when I came back to myself, when I was perhaps supposed to be dead, the guard possibly had been looking on me because he was then opening the door and running away, and afterwards they came with the doctor.
Wussten Sie, dass für die Lagerinsassen in den deutschen Lagern ein absolutes Schweigeverbot bestand, über die Zustände im Lager zu sprechen, sowohl untereinander wie selbstverständlich auch dritten Personen gegenüber? Und dass strengste Strafen gegen die Verletzung dieses Schweigeverbotes bestanden?
Well, in the camps, it was like that. It was naturally more or less, you understood it was more or less forbidden to talk about the torture you have gone through. But naturally, we, in the camps, the Nacht- und Nebel camps where I was, the situation was so bad that even torture sometimes seemed to be better than dying slowly away like that. So the only thing we spoke about really that was, when shall the war end? We are to keep up, to help our comrades, and are we to get some food tonight or not?